Well, Browns wrap up joint practices with the Eagles, but let's start here, Mary Kay. We heard from Jacoby Brissett today. We also heard from Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb talking about Jacoby Brissett. Kevin Stefanski has talked about Jacoby Brissett, and if there's one thing that kind of rings true here, it's that this team does believe in Brissett to be their starting quarterback while Deshaun Watson is suspended.
That's right. They are all in on Jacoby Brissett. They are committed to him as their starter. Even though it's 11 games, they are right now not picking up that phone and trying to pursue Jimmy Garoppolo. That's something that would only happen, I believe, if Jimmy gets cut and is on the street and they see him as a viable sort of, number two, so that they could have two quality starters on the roster. Other than that, it's Jacoby all the way.
And Ashley, look, that's why they brought him in. They knew that Deshaun Watson would probably face some sort of suspension. He's been through this before.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing with Jacoby and the other offensive players that we heard from today, Nick Chubb and Amari Cooper, it kind of just seems like even though the last 24 hours have been crazy in terms of breaking news, the Browns finally have an answer on a Deshaun Watson suspension, everyone is being pretty even keel and has insisted that it's been business as usual. And I think that kind of mentality from a guy like Jacoby Brissett is really important when you're going into this situation. And he's, like you said, Dan, been in these kind of situations before, having to come in maybe somewhat more unexpectedly than this starting stint for him is going to be.
Now, Myles Garrett was back at practice today. He has been excused dealing with a personal issue, but he did leave practice today, Mary Kay. After the individual portions were over and the team portion started, Myles did walk off the field. It didn't appear to be an injury, though.
Right, and as I reported yesterday, he's been at home dealing he's been at the side of a very, very gravely ill family member. So, fans can rest assured that Myles is fine. He was just doing what he needed to do. The Browns gave him all the time that he needed. But when we saw him walk off practice today, of course, we're all hoping that everything is okay and that, that he can remain with the team. No word yet or update yet on if there was anything, any other reason why he left practice. But, good to have him back. He will not play in the game on Sunday. We've come to find out, of course, that none of the starters are playing in this game. So even though he's back now, he's just going to be resting on Sunday along with all of the rest of the starters and most of the Eagles starters too.
And Ashley, we've talked about this before. If anyone can get away with missing some training camp practices and still hit the ground running in week one, it's Myles Garrett.
Yeah, and I'm curious too. I think this could be really beneficial for a guy like Alex Wright, who, again, they picked him in the draft knowing he's kind of a guy they're going to have to develop, and he's going to get a lot of reps here early. We've already kind of seen that. And of course, it doesn't hurt when he's in practices to get the chance to learn from a guy like Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. But him taking these reps in these games, good for him, doesn't really matter for those veteran guys.
Hey, it may not feel like it, but there were practices these last 2 days. Mary Kay, I guess what stood out to you at practice, or what did you take away?
Well, today when they were practicing against the Eagles, Jacoby Brissett had a really nice 7-on-7 period, had a lot of touchdown passes, a couple to Amari Cooper, a couple to David Njoku, and the offense was kind of humming along. When they got into 11-on-11s, of course, the key 11-on-11s, they stalled a little, they sputtered a little bit in the red zone, and that's a little bit of a concern. They know they've got to get back to work.
Ashley, I know you want to talk about kicking. Is kicking what you want to talk about?
You can read my mind, Dan. Kicking is what I want to talk about. It's apparently all that Twitter wants to talk about, too. So I'm going to give you a little rundown for how Cade York did. So on the first time we saw him kick, it was against no pressure. He was going back and forth with Philly's Jake Elliott and Dan and I, we think we saw him miss from about 61 yards, with the caveat that no one was down there calling whether or not they made or missed. But then he drilled like 3 straight from 62. So really great showing by him. And then going against pressure, it looked like, again, he only missed one from about 55 yards out. They were on the far field. But just another really solid showing from him. And I know that's what people online definitely want to know right now, is how Cade York is doing, since this fan base already loves him.
And I'll just point out, look, the top corners were out. They didn't participate in team drills, but the Browns did struggle a little bit against Dallas Goedert. They struggled against A.J. Brown. I don't think it's anything to be too concerned about, because I think a lot of teams struggle against a guy like A.J. Brown and a tight end like Dallas Goedert. And frankly, they won't have to face either of those guys this season. So kind of something to circle that they struggled with that size. But again, there aren't many corners out there that can shut down A.J. Brown. We'll cover everything that happened here in Berea, everything that happened Sunday at First Energy Stadium, all at cleveland.com/Browns.